Wilbur Mills, born on May 24, 1909, in the somnolent railroad hamlet of Kensett, Arkansas, a speck in White County with scarcely 1,200 residents nestled amid cotton fields and timberlands, entered the world as the eldest of 3 children to Ardra Pickens Mills, a transplanted Mississippian who had carved a formidable niche as an educator, banker, and civic titan, serving as the district's first superintendent of schools, chairman of the Kensett School Board, and president of the Bank of Kensett, notably playing a key role in establishing the first integrated public school in Arkansas by merging local districts for broader access, and Abby Lois Mills, a resolute Nebraskan whose Midwestern tenacity infused the family with grit and a fierce work ethic that young Wilbur absorbed like the Delta's humid air, her influence evident in his later admonitions against debt and extravagance. The Mills household was a crucible of quiet ambition. Ardra, a descendant of Mississippi planters ruined by Reconstruction, had traded chalk for ledgers by 1909, managing the A.P. Mills Mercantile, a general store where farmers swapped sorghum for calico and bartered tales of boll weevil plagues, and the family bank, a lifeline for sharecroppers weathering lean harvests and foreclosures, often extending grace periods that taught Wilbur the human cost of financial rigidity. Young Wilbur, named perhaps for the Wright brothers' aviation fame or simply for its sturdy ring, grew up stacking shelves after school, absorbing his father's tales of civic duty, Ardra's role in securing Kensett's first paved roads in 1912 and lobbying for a post office upgrade in 1915, and his mother's admonitions to never owe a man a dime, lessons that forged a fiscal conservatism tempered by empathy for the rural poor, whom he saw default on loans during the 1920s cotton glut. Kensett's one-room schoolhouse, where Wilbur began in 1915 at age 6 under his father's superintendency, sparked his intellectual fire with primers on American history and arithmetic. By 1926, he graduated valedictorian from Searcy High School, 12 miles south, delivering a commencement oration on the virtue of perseverance that hinted at the legislative doggedness to come. His lanky 6-foot frame, wire-rimmed glasses, and earnest baritone marking him as a scholar among plowboys, while classmates recalled his precocious editorials in the school paper critiquing Prohibition's economic toll on farmers. Those high school years were a tapestry of debate club triumphs, winning regional tournaments with arguments on tariff reform and Prohibition repeal, choir solos at First Methodist Church where he sang bass in hymns like Rock of Ages, and clerking at the family store, where he mastered double-entry bookkeeping and overheard farmers' gripes about crop prices and freight rates, imprinting a lifelong mission to stabilize rural economies through federal aid. The 1920s, with Harding's normalcy giving way to Coolidge's parsimony, framed his adolescence. At 15, he witnessed the 1924 Democratic National Convention's chaos via radio static in the Mercantile, sparking a fascination with politics as a lever for justice amid the Klan's resurgence in Arkansas, while the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, swamping nearby fields and displacing 200 White County families, underscored government's role in disaster relief, a lesson he carried to Washington as he helped distribute Red Cross aid crates from the family store. In 1926, Mills enrolled at Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, a Methodist liberal arts bastion 50 miles southwest affiliated with the Arkansas Methodist Conference, residing in the red brick Martin Hall dormitory where he shared a room with future state senator Joe Hardin, devouring history texts on Jeffersonian democracy and joining the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity, balancing camaraderie with academic rigor through late-night poker games that honed his strategic mind. As debate team captain, he led Hendrix to victories across Arkansas and Oklahoma, arguing for rural electrification under the Tennessee Valley Authority model and farm subsidies to counter deflation, while defending Southern agrarian values against urban industrialization, his rhetorical flair earning him the nickname, Silver Tongue, among peers and a spot in the college's Pi Kappa Delta Honor Society. Graduating in 1930 as salutatorian with a Bachelor of Arts in History, his thesis, Constitutional Limits on Federal Taxation, presaged his ways and means mastery and drew praise from Professor Leland Toland for its analysis of the 16th Amendment. He delivered a commencement address urging graduates to build bridges, not walls, a metaphor for his bipartisan ethos that resonated amid the stock market crash's aftershocks. The Great Depression's shadow loomed, with banks shuttering nationwide and Arkansas farms foreclosing at 20% rates, Mills headed to Harvard Law School in fall 1930, arriving in Cambridge amid Hoover's faltering recovery and breadline snaking through Harvard Square, where he studied under Felix Frankfurter, the future Supreme Court justice whose seminars on federalism and economic regulation shaped Mills's vision of government as a guarantor of equity without extravagance, emphasizing progressive taxation to fund social safety nets. Harvard's crucible, student protests over tuition hikes that forced Mills to tutor undergrads for $1 an hour, and soup kitchens in Harvard Yard where he volunteered, tested his resilience. He clerked summers at Boston's Ropes and Gray, drafting wills for Brahmin elites like the Cabots and Lodges, and penned letters home marveling at Roosevelt's New Deal experiments, particularly the 1933 Banking Act that saved institutions like his father's by insuring deposits up to $2,500. Graduating in June 1933 with a Bachelor of Laws amid a 25% unemployment rate, he passed the Arkansas bar that summer after self-studying under Little Rock attorney J.N. High School, but the Depression's grip on Kensett beckoned him home. At 24, he took the helm of the Bank of Kensett, teetering on insolvency with $12,000 in deposits, about $280,000 today, and bad loans from drought-stricken farmers, working 16-hour days to renegotiate mortgages, extending terms for 50 clients, and secure Reconstruction Finance Corporation grants totaling $15,000, a baptism in crisis management that cemented his disdain for fiscal profligacy and honed his knack for balancing compassion with ledgers, as he personally visited farms to assess collateral like mule teams and cotton bales. On May 27, 1934, Mills married Gertrude Clarine (Polly) Billingsley, a poised schoolteacher from Melbourne, Arkansas, met at a 1933 church picnic in Izard County where she impressed him with her knowledge of Shakespeare. Their wedding, a modest Methodist affair in Searcy attended by 150 guests including Governor Futrell, marked the start of a 62-year partnership that produced daughters Annabelle, born October 12, 1935, later an educator who taught history in Little Rock Public Schools, and Geneva, born March 3, 1940, later a nurse specializing in geriatrics at UAMS, anchoring Mills through political storms, though the marriage later frayed under scandal's weight, with Polly's steadfast loyalty, rooted in her own rural upbringing and her role managing the Searcy household during his absences, proving his salvation, as she confided to friends her pride in his reforms despite private strains. Politics called swiftly, in November 1934, at 25. Mills won election as White County's judge and probate officer, the youngest in Arkansas history and the 29th to hold the post, defeating incumbent W.E. Bill Clark with 57% of the vote on a platform blending New Deal optimism, promising county-funded medical care for the poor, with Arkansas thrift, cutting courthouse waste by 15% through auctioning surplus equipment. Sworn in on January 1, 1935, he revolutionized the office, securing a $5,000 quorum court appropriation, about $113,000 today, for a pioneering health program, $2.50 daily hospital stays, $57 now, free prescriptions filled at cost from Searcy pharmacies, and physician visits for indigents vetted by justices of the peace, treating 800 patients by 1938, including tuberculosis cases at Boonville Sanatorium, and foreshadowing Medicare's framework, all while presiding over 200 probate cases annually, with emphasis on fair inheritance distributions for widows. He balanced budgets by streamlining road maintenance, paving 20 miles of gravel lanes with WPA labor, and funneling federal relief to farmers, earning Searcy Daily Citizen accolades as the People's Judge and a nod from Governor J.M. Futrell, who appointed him to a state banking commission in 1937, eyeing him for higher office amid whispers of a lieutenant governor bid. Mills's tenure, ending in 1938, was a masterclass in grassroots governance, his courtroom a stage for settling land disputes with Solomonic fairness, famously mediating a 1936 boundary feud between two Kensett farmers by redrawing lines based on old surveys, and advocating for juvenile reform, diverting 30 youths to vocational training instead of jail, cementing his reputation as a reformer with roots in Kensett's red clay. The 1938 special election for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District, vacated by John E. Miller's federal judgeship, propelled Mills to Washington. In the August Democratic primary, he outpolled rivals David Partain, a Little Rock attorney with ties to the Crump machine, and Claude Fuller, a populist farmer from Eureka Springs, with 42% in a runoff. Campaigning on flood control for the White River to prevent 1927-style devastation, rural electrification for Searcy's hinterlands via REA loans, and federal loans for cotton growers reeling from 10-cent per pound prices, his Harvard polish softened by Delta drawl winning urban Little Rock precincts by 55% and rural Lone Oak by 60%. Unopposed in the November general election, Arkansas's Jim Crow machine ensured Republican irrelevance. He took the oath on January 3, 1939, at 29, the youngest Arkansan ever in Congress, entering the 76th Congress amid FDR's court-packing fallout and Europe's descent into war, rooming in a modest DuPont Circle boarding house with fellow freshman Hale Boggs. Assigned to the Territories Committee, Mills sponsored bills for Arkansas Post-National Memorial to commemorate De Soto's explorations and veterans' pensions for Spanish-American War survivors, but his meticulous study of tax codes, often reading Internal Revenue Service manuals past midnight in the Library of Congress, caught Speaker Sam Rayburn's eye, landing him on the Ways and Means Committee in January 1942, a rare coup for a sophomore where he apprenticed under Chairman Robert L. Doughton. Mastering the arcane, tariffs on imported wool, excises on tobacco, Social Security trust funds actuarial tables, his photographic memory reciting code sections verbatim and earning the moniker, the Numbers Man, from colleagues like Boggs and John Dingell. World War II shaped his early tenure. Ineligible for combat due to his judgeship and a minor heart murmur, Mills rallied war bond drives in Searcy that raised $500,000 by 1943, visiting Camp Robinson to cheer draftees from White County, and backed Lend-Lease appropriations in March 1941, ensuring Arkansas's bauxite mine supplied aluminum for B-17 bombers and Little Rock Arsenal produced 75mm shells, while Polly led Red Cross efforts, rationing flour for victory cakes and organizing blood drives that collected 1,000 pints. His 1943 vote for the Current Tax Payment Act introduced payroll withholding to fund the war effort, stabilizing revenue at $45 billion annually but irking farmers who preferred lump-sum taxes, a rare misstep he offset with speeches promising post-war prosperity and sponsoring the 1944 GI Bill amendments for Arkansas veterans. The post-war 1940s and 1950s saw Mills's star ascend, re-elected in 1946 with 72% against token Republican J.H. Crane amid Truman's Fair Deal push, and consistently above 70% thereafter, facing only 3 serious challenges in 38 years, his district, spanning Little Rock's factories, Conway's colleges, and Washita's timberlands, embraced his blend of fiscal restraint and social investment, with Mills commuting via Southern Airways flights to balance D.C. duties with Searcy town halls. As Ways and Means ranking member by 1950, he co-authored the Social Security Amendments of 1950, extending coverage to 10.2 million farmers, domestics, and self-employed like Kensett merchants, raising benefits 77% to counter 8% inflation from Korean War shortages, a lifeline for Kensett's elderly that he pitched as security, not charity, in speeches to Rotary clubs. The 1954 Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act, liberalizing tariffs under Eisenhower's reciprocity push, boosted Arkansas rice exports to Latin America by 15%, though he shielded domestic steel with quotas to protect Pine Bluff mills employing 2,000, placating unions like the AFL-CIO. Personally, Mills and Polly settled into a Searcy ranch home on West Race Avenue, hosting barbecues for constituents and fishing at Greer's Ferry Lake with daughters, though 18-hour D.C. days strained family time, planting seeds of isolation as Mills confided to Polly his exhaustion from committee markups. The 1958 death of Chairman Jerry Cooper elevated Mills to Ways and Means chair at 49, the youngest ever, on January 7, 1959, granting him near-dictatorial control over taxes, trade, and welfare. Rayburn called him the gatekeeper of America's purse, his office a shrine of ledgers and tobacco tins, where he chain-smoked camels and negotiated with presidents from Eisenhower to Nixon, often outmaneuvering Treasury secretaries like Robert Anderson. His chairmanship, spanning 1959 to 1974, was a legislative colossus. The 1956 Federal Aid Highway Act, co-drafted by Mills with Senator Albert Gore Sr., created the Highway Trust Fund via a 3-cent gas tax, raised to 4 cents in 1959, building 41,000 miles of interstates, including I-40 through Arkansas that cut travel time from Little Rock to Memphis by 2 hours, funneling $200 million to Little Rock contractors by 1965 and spurring suburban growth. Healthcare defined his legacy. Initially wary of federal overreach, he crafted the 1960 Kerr-Mills Act with Senator Robert S. Kerr, granting states funds for elderly medical care via matching grants, covering $3 million by 1964, including 50,000 Arkansans, a stepping stone to Medicare that tested state administration models. As Lyndon Johnson's Great Society dawned, Mills brokered Medicare's July 30, 1965, passage, merging AMA-backed private plans, Part B, with union demands for hospital coverage, Part A, insulating Social Security's trust fund to ensure solvency with actuarial projections to 1990, and stood beside LBJ and Truman at the signing in Independence, Missouri, his compromise covering 19 million seniors and earning Truman's quip, "Wilbur, you've done what I couldn't." Medicaid followed as Title 19, with state matching funds for 11 million poor, tailored to Arkansas's budget constraints at 50% federal share, expanding to prenatal and disability care by 1970 and serving 200,000 in his state. Mills's tax reforms were equally seismic. The 1964 Revenue Act, fulfilling Kennedy's posthumous wish, cut top rates from 91% to 70%, indexed brackets to curb inflation's bite on middle-class earners, and spurred 6% GDP growth through $11 billion in cuts, while the 1969 Tax Reform Act, his crowning achievement amid anti-war protests, slashed rates for the bottom quintile by 20%, raised them for millionaires to 77%, closed oil depletion loopholes favored by Texas barons, and introduced the alternative minimum tax to snare 155,000 high-income evaders, netting $8 billion yearly and earning IRS Chief Sheldon Cohen's praise as the fairest code since 1913, though it drew ire from oilmen like Clint Murchison. Social Security expansions under his gavel: 1956 disability benefits for 150,000 workers, 1958 dependent children coverage for 2 million, bolstered 30 million recipients, while the 1974 ERISA protected 40 million pensions post-Studebaker's 1963 collapse that left 4,000 workers penniless, mandating vesting schedules after 10 years and fiduciary standards enforced by the Labor Department. Yet Mills's fiscal orthodoxy clashed with LBJ's Vietnam spending. In 1967, he blocked a 10% surtax until $6 billion in cuts were secured to domestic programs like Head Start, balancing the FI 1968 budget at $178 billion, the last surplus until 1998, and cementing his deficit hawk legend. With Mills congratulating Johnson in a White House memo, "You've reduced the national debt for the first time in a decade." Trade liberalization via the 1962 Trade Expansion Act enabled Kennedy round tariff cuts of 35% in Geneva, boosting Arkansas soybean exports to Japan by 20% to $50 million annually, while domestic pork, $50 million for Greer's Ferry Dam completed in 1966, Veterans Hospitals in North Little Rock expanded in 1970, fortified his district against floods and recession. Civil rights tested his Southern roots, initially signing the 1957 Southern Manifesto to oppose Brown versus Board of Education's desegregation, persuaded by Rayburn, who warned of electoral doom despite Mills's private qualms. He pivoted by 1964, backing the Civil Rights Act's tax provisions to withhold funds from segregated schools and desegregating committee staff by hiring Walter Little, a black aide from North Carolina, in 1959, earning quiet praise from Little Rock's NAACP but jeers from Dixiecrats like John McClellan. Presidential buzz peaked in 1968, with allies entering his name in 4 primaries as a draft alternative to Eugene McCarthy, netting 27 delegates at Chicago's chaotic convention amid anti-war riots, and in 1972, friends like Senators John Tower and James Eastland drafted him for the nomination on a platform of automatic Social Security COLA's index to CPI, winning 33 votes at the Miami convention, though he demurred, prioritizing Ways and Means over McGovern's Treasury Secretary overtures. Private frailties shadowed this public titan. Mills's alcoholism, dormant in Kensit's dry circles, festered in DC's cocktail culture, solitary scotches replacing family dinners as daughters wed, Annabelle to a Little Rock banker in 1958, Geneva to a physician in 1962, and Polly retreated to Searcy for bridge clubs. By 1970, his 220-pound frame bore the toll, chain-smoking 3 packs daily, skipped meals leading to ulcers, and hypochondriac visits to Bethesda Naval Hospital for imagined ailments like heart palpitations, a cycle Polly urged him to break with letters pleading for moderation. The 1974 midterms, pitting him against Republican Judy Petty, a former aide turned critic, seemed a formality, his 70% wins since 1946 and Little Rock's aerospace boom at the Air Force Base ensured loyalty. But on October 7, 1974, at 2:15 a.m., U.S. Park Police stopped his Lincoln on Rock Creek Parkway for driving sans headlights. Driver Esteban Steve Gomez, a Boston real estate scion and Mills' aide, was sober, but Mills, bloodied from a domestic spat at his Colorama home and reeking of bourbon, slurred refusals to produce ID, while Annabelle Battistella, stage-named Fauna Fox, the Argentine firecracker, a 38-year-old burlesque dancer met at a Georgetown club, was in the back seat with her husband Eduardo Battistella, leaping into the Tidal Basin in panic, a 7-foot plunge soaking her sequined gown as she screamed for help. Rescued by officers and fined $35 for public intoxication, Fox was hospitalized at St. Elizabeth's for evaluation. Mills, spared arrest due to Gomez's plea and his clout, was driven home, the incident spun as a fender bender by Press Secretary Joe Acuff. The Washington Post's October 9 expose, Mills linked to woman in car stop, unleashed a media storm, tabloids dubbing it the Tidal Basin bombshell, with Doonesbury strips mocking Mills as a lovesick drunk and Johnny Carson quipping on The Tonight Show about congressional dips. Defiant, he won re-election on November 5 with 59%, his lowest margin, vowing renewed vigor in a victory speech at the Excelsior Hotel. But on November 30, in Boston, Mills, plastered after downing scotch at a hotel bar, stumbled onto Fox's burlesque stage at the Pilgrim Theater during her Fauna Fox Fling review, slurring praise for his dear friend amid her feather boas and Eduardo's awkward hovering, CBS cameras capturing the fiasco for Cronkite's broadcast, a nadir that shattered his gravitas and prompted ethics complaints from Common Cause. House leaders like Tip O'Neill and Carl Albert demanded resignation. On December 10, 1974, Mills surrendered the chairmanship to Al Ullman, confessing in a choked floor speech, "I have lost control of my life," the chamber's standing ovation a bittersweet requiem amid tears from Boggs. Checking into Austin Riggs Center in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, for initial assessment, then Palm Beach Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, for 2 months of detox joined by Polly, he endured group therapy and emerged in February 1975 for AA meetings in Searcy, crediting the program with his sobriety. IRS audits cleared him. Fox's $400 monthly consulting stipend was legitimate for cultural advice, but Polly's 1976 separation filing, citing emotional distress from public humiliation, underscored personal wreckage, though they reconciled by 1977 after counseling at First Methodist. Returning to Congress, Mills was a ghost, sponsoring minor pension bills like COLA adjustments while dodging press in the Rayburn Building tunnels, his influence gutted as the committee splintered into subcommittees. On March 31, 1976, he announced retirement, effective January 3, 1977, succeeded by Jim Guy Tucker, his final speech lamenting the 1974 health insurance bill's one-vote defeat amid Watergate distractions. At Shea and Gould's D.C. office, he advised clients like Boeing and General Motors on tax litigation, earning $500 hourly and arguing cases before the tax court, while weekends in Searcy saw him crafting birdhouses in a backyard workshop, a sober ritual born of AA's mindfulness exercises. The Wilbur D. Mills Institute for Legislative Studies at Ouachita Baptist University, founded in 1978, channeled royalties from his 1976 memoir Riding the Tiger, a candid account of power's perils, to addiction research, landmarks like the 1980 Mills Treatment Center in Searcy, a 100-bed facility treating 500 annually, the 1982 I-630 freeway through Little Rock easing 100,000 daily commutes, the 1985 Agriculture Hall of Fame induction for farm subsidy advocacy, and the 1990 Lock and Dam No. 2 on the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Navigation System honored his legacy, as did the Wilbur D. Mills University Studies High School and Sweet Home and endowed chairs at UAMS for alcoholism studies. Mentoring young Democrats like Bill Clinton, whom he endorsed in 1974's gubernatorial bid, over catfish dinners at Catfish Hole, he died on May 2, 1992, at 82 in Searcy, Arkansas, from emphysema complications at White County Memorial Hospital. His funeral at First United Methodist drawing 2,000, including President-elect Clinton and Speaker Foley, eulogies lauding him as the quiet architect of the American dream. Polly died on October 16, 2001, at 92, their graves at Kensett Cemetery etched with a gavel, his imprint enduring in Medicare's 50 Million Lives, ERISA's pension safeguards, and the Masonic Grand Lodge's annual fundraising for recovery programs. Mills's downfall stemmed from a cascade of personal and strategic missteps, rooted in unchecked alcoholism and hubris that clashed with the post-Watergate-era's demand for transparency. His drinking, escalating through the 1960s from social tipples at Rayburn's Board of Education gatherings to solitary binges amid Vietnam funding fights, dulled his judgment, culminating in the October 1974 Tidal Basin incident, where intoxication and entanglement with Fauna Fox exposed a double life of late-night clubs and extramarital dalliances. Shattering his teetotaler myth and betraying Polly's trust, the public spectacle amplified by his bloodied, incoherent state and Fox's dramatic plunge. Denying the incident's gravity, spinning it as a traffic mishap in press releases and voter mailers, reflected arrogance, presuming his stature would deflect scrutiny, a miscalculation in Watergate's wake when the Post's relentless coverage by reporters like Marilyn Berger turned a peccadillo into a morality tale, eroding his moral authority. The November Boston stage appearance, a drunken bid to control the narrative by defending Fox amid her review's chaos, was catastrophic, projecting delusion and alienating allies like O'Neill, who saw resignation as inevitable to preserve Democratic control, while handing ammunition to ethics probes from the House Administration Committee. Institutionally, his failure to groom a Ways and Means successor like Ullman earlier left the committee adrift during his absence, while politically, campaigning without addressing the scandal in stump speeches eroded his moral capital, his 59% win a hollow echo of past landslides amid low turnout. These errors, born of a rural titan's insulation from Washington's temptations and a reluctance to seek help despite Polly's pleas, transformed Mr. Chairman into a cautionary tale of power's fragility, his legacy forever tinged by the fall from grace.